Hi everyone, my name is Boris Spremo. I'm the tokenization lead at Polygon Labs, and we're here to talk about DigiShares and Polygon ID, who are collaborating to establish a global framework for open, transparent, secure, and flexible decentralized identity for tokenization, and many other things. So this is a fairly interesting and new development, and something that we've been waiting for a long, long time in the tokenization industry and also in the self-sovereign identity industry. It's finally there. And here we have Martin and Claus from DigiShares, a tokenization platform. We have Otto Mora from Polygon ID. All right, so over to you, Claus, maybe for an introduction about DigiShares.
Yeah, so my name is Claus. I'm the CEO of DigiShares, one of the co-founders about 5-6 years ago. Today, DigiShares is a provider of infrastructure solutions for tokenization of real-world assets, real estate, investment funds, and so on. We have more than 150 clients in 40 countries, so we cover quite globally, and that's also why we have seen this topic of today as a big hindrance for sort of further development of the tokenization ecosystem.
Terrific. And over to you, Otto, for introduction to Polygon ID.
Yeah, absolutely. Otto Mora. I'm the America's BD lead for Polygon ID, based in Costa Rica. So Polygon ID is a self-sovereign identity platform anchored on the Polygon blockchain, but also, interoperable with the rest of the EVM ecosystem. So you can really port identity across any EVM chain. Our differentiating factor is enabling privacy in identity disclosures. So we use zero-knowledge proof technology and selective disclosures to minimize the amount of data exposed about your identity when you're using our platform. So really excited to be here. And asset tokenization is one of the things that's near and dear to my heart. So excited to collaborate with DigiShares.
Terrific. Amazing. And last but certainly not least, Martin, can you do a brief introduction of you?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. Yeah, my name is Martin Hotka. I'm a blockchain developer at DigiShares. It's been already 2 years, and basically I'm taking care of smart contract development, integration, testing, and all that kind of things.
Wonderful. Thanks for the introduction, guys. Just as a side note, Polygon ID is a project of Polygon Labs. We are a software producer, most specializing in scalability solutions for EVM networks. So we are the leaders in layer 2 action space, and we are most certainly a leader in zero knowledge space, and Polygon ID is one of the finest applications of that. So looking forward to the conversation right now. And if everyone agrees, I'm going to slip into our proposed agenda and maybe asked for Otto and Claus to introduce a little bit, about DigiShares platform, a little bit of Polygon ID, and, what is the overlap there? What is the single value that has been done together as part of the ITO project? Or Ditto?
Meet me first. All right. So DigiShares provides solutions for tokenization. So our clients use our platform to tokenize various assets. They mint tokens, they make the tokens available for investors, they facilitate trading, they pay out dividends, and so on. They manage a share cap table. They do a lot of things, but all of it is dependent on doing KYC on the user, KYB on business users, and that KYC has to be done as it is right now, once for every platform that you need to access in the ecosystem, which is not scalable and it's not efficient. Also, we are launching an exchange called realestate.exchange, and it came to our attention at some point that using the existing KYC and whitelisting framework was totally non-scalable, because we would need to basically KYC and whitelist each wallet and each user per each new listed asset on the exchange, right? So for 1,000 assets and for 1,000 users, we'd need to do 1 million KYCs. So obviously, that's not scalable, right? Or we needed something else. So we were highly motivated to go in this direction, and actually we've been looking at doing something like this for a long time, more than 1.5 years. But we were hoping someone else would do it for us and just make a standard that everyone could use. Never happened. So we scanned the market for good options for how we could sort of maybe piggyback on something else, right, and save time and be efficient and create something relatively fast. And I quickly found Polygon ID to be, I think, a leader in the space and something that we could build on as a trusted partner. And also in a relatively short time, and also with, of course, brand value that would make sure that or sort of increase the chance of adoption in the tokenization ecosystem primarily. So our motivation was to create something totally free, open source, non-vendor specific. Anyone should be able to use it. It must not be centralized in any way. It must not be tied to DigiShares as provider. We want everyone to be able to use it, and no one should be thinking about competition or anything like that. All our clients will definitely be, I would say, almost forced to use it. We'll use it also on the exchange that we launch. SumSub and Fractal are signed up as 2 KYC providers to provide support for it. And yeah, we are excited to be developing it together with Polygon.
Yeah, great. I mean, I think Klaus hit it, pretty much on the nail. Like reusable identity, it's something that we definitely want to leverage. We want to avoid having users KYC themselves over and over again in these various asset tokenization platforms. That's a common headache that we've been seeing. We think, that in Polygon ID, we have the right set of tools to solve this problem. And in conjunction with the power of the DigiShares platform, we can create a compelling, standard that can be used across the industry. Definitely, having options, having sort of control of the users, them being in control of their data is important. That's something that we adhere to. Self-sovereign identity principles, explicitly center themselves of the user having control of their data, and also having options into which issuer you're going to use for the KYC, right? So we have a marketplace of credentials, and we have KYC issuers such as the ones that have been mentioned by Klaus, but even more KYC issuers. So really, this is kind of a Lego bricks type of situation. We provide you all of the Lego bricks, and you build your solution. In this case, we're going after asset tokenization, which I think is also something that in the industry you've heard much about, but it's also hard to promote standardization, right? So industry collaboration is important as well to make sure that this not only permeates within Web3 but outside, which is really where the potential for uptake is.
Terrific. Amazing. Thank you. So maybe just to expand or provide more color for those who are new to tokenization, Klaus, how would you define tokenization? We mentioned the word several times during this call. I say it at least 100 times per day because it's my job, but then every so often someone asks me, what are you on about, Boris? What are you talking about? So could you please explain, in the briefest of terms, or the way you think you should, what is it really?
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit tired of the term myself. Also using it 100 times every day. And I think that within a few years, it'll hopefully go out of the diary and it'll just be out of our terminology, and it'll just be the way of doing things. So tokenization is basically the concept of representing some kind of security or underlying asset, ownership right for an underlying asset as a token on the blockchain. So you can achieve the same kind of efficiency and cost reduction, disintermediation that you also achieve with Bitcoin and Ethereum and the other cryptocurrencies. So basically, we are moving securities, transactions, and processing to the chain. We transact with tokens representing ownership rights in real estate or gold, mining, renewables, diamonds, any kind of underlying asset. We transact with that on-chain really efficiently outside the financial ecosystem without intermediaries in a decentralized way.
Amazing. That's a great description. And I'm guessing that when you mention ownership, and this is for your Otto, I guess, ownership is in legal terms inevitably somehow connected with identity, right? So could you maybe explain just a little bit, you mentioned the words KYC and AML and all that, how does it work in relation to assets in the briefest of terms?
Yeah, so we are operating in the world of securities regulation. All the tokens that we produce are clients meant using our platform are securities. Any regulator around the world will demand that you use KYC for any kind of access to these securities. It's a necessity, I would say, to update share cap tables and ownership records and so on. And it's a requirement that you know who you are trading with beforehand, so you can update these records, right? So KYC is an integrated part of what we do in the tokenization ecosystem. We can't avoid it. It's a necessary evil. I think we'll get the same situation in the overall crypto ecosystem within a few years. It's going that direction, but we are, I think, the front runner already now enforcing KYC restrictions on all our users simply is required by law.
Terrific. Thank you. And Otto, can I ask you a question? We talk about identity. Now we define what it is in relation to assets. But why is decentralized identity better than, whatever the alternative is, whatever the status quo, the old or the current maybe is?
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges we have in Web 2, kind of legacy platforms is, centralized actors controlling your data and exploiting it for their own purposes, right? So you have Facebook, using your data, right? And then you get Facebook for free, but it's really not for free, right? They're exploiting your data, they're analyzing it, they're selling that information onto their marketing customers, right? So you're essentially the product, right, at that point. And the same thing with Google and other platforms that purportedly are for free, but really they're exploiting your data, right? So yeah, you get a nice little cloud vault that you can use, but really their data is not really fully your data. So with self-sovereign identity and decentralized identity, we are trying to solve that problem and give the user back control of their information and give them more say into how their data is used, right? We're not opposing to people having access to data and using it for whatever business purposes are necessary, but there should be informed consent of the user as to why that data is there, and also availability of options, right? You should have various providers that you can use. You should choose whatever your favorite identity wallet is to be able to use, just like you can choose any Web3 wallet, right? You can choose MetaMask, you can choose Rainbow Wallet, you can choose whatever wallet you like. The same thing should be, possible for identity on Web3, right? And then the other thing that's important, I think, is sort of compliance is important, right? The Binance use case, and kind of comparing that to the recent approach from Coinbase clearly shows that compliance is just a necessary thing that you have to take care of, right? And doing things by the book and in compliance with regulators and not defying them upfront, like Uber would do, with their taxis in invading various countries, right? Is the right way to go. So compliance, and especially proactive compliance, can pay off long term.
Absolutely. And when you mentioned, ownership of my own data and all that, it's so smart because that has been why, I entered Web3, one of the reasons at least. Super exciting stuff. Claus, a question for you. Which players are participating in the Ditto framework currently? And where are you going with that? What's the rollout plan in terms of the types of actors, if that makes sense?
Yeah, good question, right? So we're just getting started. So for now, it's the two of us. It's SumSub, it's Fractal. But I think the KYC providers will be relatively easy to onboard. And then as soon as we have it ready, we'll be rolling it out to our clients. And we'll definitely be using it also on the exchange. And we are ready to speak to anyone who's interested in adopting the technology and collaborate with anyone who wants to participate. We don't want to keep it to ourselves, definitely. But the plan is to market it, to get more adopters, to present it, I would say, at conferences, industry associations, and so on, as much as we can. Make it easy to use, make it user-friendly, remove obstacles. Roll it out as we continue our progress and maturation process, I would say, of the tokenization ecosystem.
Excellent. Thank you. Martin, could you explain in maybe a little bit more detail how the Ditto framework will function for asset trades? How does it affect the actual exchange, the flow of assets between different parties?
Oh yeah, definitely. So I feel like first thing to mention is that the tokenized assets are permission tokens, right? And we are deploying them on permissionless blockchains. So obviously there need to be some restrictions imposed on the trading itself, right? But from like a user onboarding perspective, once the user KYCs and receives their credential, they will be added into a whitelist registry on chain, right? And thanks to that whitelist registry, the flow will basically be the same. Like they won't even notice it because all the checking is happening behind the curtains, right? So it should be basically streamlined and also very much scalable, because once you are in that whitelist registry and you have all the attributes that you need for trading, then you can just trade any tokens you want.
Terrific. So it's almost transparent, right? Once you're done with the onboarding, things happen on their own. I'm wondering about your collective opinions about the tokenization industry. Maybe the first question, slightly more focused for you, Claus, is what are the previous efforts, and why do you think that Ditto will be successful? How does it improve over the status quo?
Yeah, so we've looked at some of the attempts at creating something in this, which have not been very successful, I would say. I think it's primarily because they have been sort of driven by a single centralized actor in the ecosystem, and it has been difficult to avoid to be tied into a vendor-specific ecosystem, right? So each tokenization vendor is to some degree trying to their own sort of ecosystem, I would say, around them, right? The partner network and so on. And in some cases, we have seen that they also try to sort of control the identity part of this and KYC and so on, at least to some degree. So based on our sort of innovation, as mentioned, we didn't like that approach and wanted to try something that was completely free from any specific vendor, right? So it's an exercise also on our part to make sure that we really that there should be no connection to DigiShares as a company, right? No necessity to work with us in any way, and still have benefit from the ID framework.
So it's almost like a public good, and what you're building is an ecosystem, not a platform. It's all the good Web3 things, right?
Yes, but we of course we are motivated also by, I would say, by our own interest in growing as a company, right? Because if we can make the tokenization industry succeed and grow and so on, it's a benefit for all of us. And at this stage, I think that we need to collaborate more than compete. Definitely, it's such a small industry still, but the potential is high. And we haven't seen any standard actually to develop over the years that sort of fulfills the role of what we need, certainly.
Absolutely. So Otto, what are others doing with Polygon ID to support tokenization? What's happening elsewhere? If you could share.
Yeah, without mentioning client names, right? We have an Asian bank that's really interested in asset tokenization for carbon credits. This is, very much aligned with the same needs that Klaus and Martin were describing, right? You have one investor wanting to send an asset to another investor. You have to ensure that before that transaction takes place on chain, both investors are KYC'd, and then having this marketplace of KYC issuers enables just that, right? This Lego bricks that you can plug and play. You can choose your level of compliance and due diligence that you want, and then you can enable the transfer, right? But we also have clients in Europe that are really, really interested in this. We've had conversations with customers that are exploring the same use case for all kinds of tokenized assets, right? So we have the real estate use case as the most clear one, but I think this goes even beyond that, right? I think the Ditto framework has the potential to set a standard for other industries that also use tokenized assets.
Absolutely. Looking from my perspective, you need to achieve compliance in different jurisdictions in different ways. And it's almost, if you have a generic standard, it is also privacy preserving. It's like a Swiss knife, right? That is able to support these things. And speaking of other jurisdictions and so on, Klaus, back to you. So where can Ditto be applied? What kind of assets, jurisdictions, industries, where do you see it existing?
I hope it's being developed so it's asset agnostic and country jurisdiction agnostic as well. as well. I don't see that it should be limited in any way to any specific country or asset, really. I would say asset class is definitely agnostic. I would say on the regulatory side, I haven't thought about it deeply, but I really don't see how it should be tied to any specific regulation or any sort of restriction in any specific country. The KYC part of it has to be flexible enough so you can sort of extend it with whatever is needed for any specific application. We're thinking about extending it also with accreditation information, right, for the US and Singapore and so on. So of course, the goal is to make it flexible enough to support any use case in the industry.
Amazing. I love generic tools. They tend to serve everyone. So Otto, and then all this kind of put into a single value proposition. What do you think is the major unlock for blockchain markets?
I have been going to blockchain conferences since 2016, and I remember, asset tokenization was like the immediate use case right after financial money transferring, right? That was like the obvious ones. We have initiatives from the guys with Polymesh. My previous job actually involved tokenized assets and more of the intersection with the tax side of it, how you can use blockchain to kind of do better tax calculations and get the ultimate beneficial owner the right, dividend payment, tokenized shares. So there's just so much potential here that could be unlocked, right? And also from the regulator standpoint, so much more clear visibility into where the money is flowing and where these tokenized assets are being traded, right? So I think there's a lot to be gained, not only for the ease of transfer, but also for transparency and traceability, right? This is like a huge unlock for blockchain markets. And it's the reason that you and I, Boris, sit on all of these customer client calls wanting to do tokenized assets, right? Everybody is trying to get to the unicorn stage of the tokenized assets, this dream world where we can all exchange assets, easily on Web3.
Absolutely. Wholeheartedly agreed. And shall we delve one layer deeper, maybe into a little bit more detail? And I'm wondering, Otto, what would you tell us about the Polygon ID Common Schemas initiative?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the other things that comes along with decentralized identity is sort of what is the format of this credential that you have in your wallet look like, right? What are the fields they're going to have? How's the name and address and zip code and all of your, identity information going to be structured into this identity, right? So this is what is called a schema in the decentralized identity world. And what we realize is, we don't want people developing schemas and each of their own, right? And then it becomes like a VHS versus, Betamax war, right? After who adopts what. So to avoid the war, we created a common schemas initiative, try to kind of curate from our various KYC providers, such as Fractal, SumSub, et cetera, that were mentioned in the call, come up with a common KYC initiative kind of schema that you can work with. This has all of the common fields for most of the common needs. And this is the first one that we released, but we want to release more kind of sort of curated schemas that you can use for AML and for other use cases, right? Such as like passports, etc. So that we want to provide, ready to go templates that you can use for your use case. You're not having to go ask around people, what should my identity schema look like, right? Here is our schema explorer that you can use with Polygon ID. You can see the common ones being listed there. And then, if you want to fork it or modify it, you can do so as well.
Terrific. Useful. So my experience with software identity is that when I joined blockchain, it was an idea, and then it was an idea turned into a product that was useful to no one. And you're telling me now that it's actually useful. You can use it out of the box. It works, right? It supports things. And that's also the feedback that we're getting from a ton of other users, which is really, 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 we've went from nowhere to somewhere, and it's really exciting. And on that positive note, we might as well start wrapping up. So I'll ask for a couple of opinions, a couple of closing remarks, and maybe the first one from you, Otto. What is the future of tokenization and decentralized identities? Where do you see it all going?
Yeah, I think it'll become more and more relevant over this coming year. there's already draft legislation in the US to more closely regulate how these tokenized assets can move, right? It's going to eventually move away from just judicial proceedings where, a judge determines what goes and what doesn't for each individual use case to a more standardized approach. Europe has clearly taken the lead with MiCA as well to, set the way in kind of establishing some of these regulations. So very excited about that. Also, some of the players have already started moving, right? You have DTCC purchasing a firm that does blockchain, technology for asset tokenization. The clearinghouses in Europe, they're also going through the same idea, right? They see the writing on the wall. They're going to be disrupted. So this is just going to become more and more relevant. And, they're not going to do it without a clear, identity component that enables this to work, right? That investors can identify themselves and transfer and tokenize assets, right? If we are to have this kind of dream world where, we disrupt all of the players, we need this identity layer to function and function well. And that's why I think the initiative from DigiShares, it's very, visionary in that sense, right? They're proactively creating a standard, right? The best way to create the future, to predict the future, is to create it, right? So I think that's a great initiative by Claus and his team.
Absolutely. And it almost makes me think, the way you describe it also makes me think that it's like, what VPN used to be to internet way back when. It's almost like creating this regulated compliant overlay on top of public networks where we can have compliant assets and compliant markets. Whatever different people can think about public networks, they do serve a purpose. They do aggregate a lot of liquidity, but maybe we can make sure that the liquidity actually behaves in line with, regulation or legislation. Klaus, maybe a more specific application of that question, and that is in terms of real estate asset tokenization. Where do you see this going? What excites you the most? What do you think that we're going to see in the next year or two?
This is what we're discussing now. Is some of what I'm most excited about, I have to say. It's a missing piece. It's been a missing piece for a long time. Frankly, I don't understand why no one did anything for such a long time. And I hope that we can succeed to create something that is useful for all the players, all the actors in the ecosystem, and making a more interoperable ecosystem, right? So issuers can work with exchanges, custodians, all of us can work together, use the same standards. We probably can't agree on a protocol for the next couple of years, but hopefully that will also at some time converge. And that's going to be extremely helpful, I think, for the entire ecosystem. The other thing I'm very excited about is, of course, the launch of our own exchange, real estate.exchange. That's also a missing piece in the ecosystem, I think, at least for real estate tokenization. Something that we actually also didn't really want to develop to begin with, because we have sort of traditionally been a pure tech provider, not going into the market, but no one else did it. So again, we have to do it ourselves. So we hopefully launch that in Q1 and initiate in the US and start listing assets and make it easy, relatively easy and inexpensive for asset owners to list their real estate assets, and do it in a sort of as decentralized as we can, I would say, within securities regulation, and hopefully more and more decentralized as we move forward.
Absolutely. And what I'm especially excited about is the fact that the emergence of AMMs as trading venues, because it's a novel mechanism. We have not seen that. It is unique to blockchain. It is quite an improvement on ordinary order book. Exchanges creates different business models. So the fact that this is happening in a regulated way and attracting both issuers and investors, amazing stuff. And on that positive note, thank you ever so much for your time, Otto, Klaus, and Martin. Really appreciate your thoughts and looking forward to some amazing work being done with you guys and to observing your successes. Thank you so much.